Well, hey there, folks. This is Justin Dyke from CartoonSmart.com. I teach most of the iOS programming tutorials over there, actually currently all of them. And I also obviously teach some illustration tutorials as well. And if you enjoy the lesson that you're about to watch, I've got to give a little shout out to my friend Paris Christow from ToonboxStudio.com. He's the one that has over the years told me you need to make a comic book illustration, or not illustration course, just a comic books course or comic strips. Because for many years, I'm just thumbing through some of my old stuff. For many years, I did write a webcomic, and this was actually pre-Twitter, pre-YouTube, pre all the good social media that we've got out there now. So I think I wrote somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 strips, and I kind of boiled them all down to about a third of that in good ones that I compiled in a free iBook that's in the iBook store, which is what I'm thumbing through right now. So there was a lot of good ones out there, and again, it's free, so if you want to check it out. But I'm going to kind of go over some of the stuff that I thought was funny, and if you're interested in being a comic strip artist, there's no better time to do it. Like I said, I did all this before there was easier ways of sharing all this stuff. I would just post them on a website. So, if you're going to do this, you've got, what you've got. You've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you got all that good stuff. So there's a lot of ways to make your stuff viral and get seen. And, I think people appreciate an indie artist. And that's one of the things that they're going to, possibly share more than others. So anyway, let's switch out of this, and I'm going to go over some notes on a sketchpad. Okay, so get ready for some generalities here. One of the biggest tips I'd have for any budding comic strip artist is always write one more. And I'm going to try to put that over here at the top so you can at least see it as you're skimming through this video, not actually paying attention. So always write one. This is terrible. I can hardly spell. I mean, that's barely legible. Always write one more. And what I mean by that is if you've got 4 panels, okay, go ahead and spend your time to fill in this one, this one, this one, this one, and then come back an hour later, okay? And when you do, think about what would be the next thing that's said, okay? So you have to almost step away from the canvas and pretend that you've finished everything, and then what you'll probably find is that this one was somewhat funny, but what you write next is actually going to be the better joke, okay? Because the neat thing about this is you're actually kind of, playing off of what you thought was funny before, but now you've actually got something funnier. And, at this point, you've taken a break, you've got another cup of coffee, and you're kind of stepping away from it. And then you go, oh, wait, don't I have to expand my comic? Well, who cares? All right, if you absolutely want to leave what was in over here, here, and here, do it. Just draw more. There's no limitations anymore. You're not going to get printed in the newspaper. That doesn't happen. All right. You're going to get printed on the internet, and there's unlimited space there. All right. So don't worry about breaking your kind of format. But what you'll probably find is that if you've got a great, 2 panels over here, one of these is really not that necessary. It maybe can be combined into the first one, something like that. So I would say try if you can, just compress things down to your funniest stuff. But the point here is obviously do this, right? One more. Okay, so next tip. Obviously, you saw the format that my comics were in. They actually were sort of strict. They were all 4 panel, and I think it's really hard to come up with something funny if you're just doing one big panel like that. Okay, you don't have as much setup, obviously, and there's kind of not this natural beat, or rhythm to the comic. So if you're doing that kind of Far Side thing, I mean, it's amazing that he was able to do that and make it as funny as it was. Sticking to a 1-panel joke. What I think is a great formula is something, 3 or 4. But this was the old Johnny Carson formula, and I'm gonna put over here Johnny formula. Again, this is so you can skip through here. All right, this is the Johnny formula. Johnny Carson would say that you would set up the joke. Okay, so tell people what you're going to do in this one. All right, There you are. You tell people what you're going to do. Then here, you do it. And then in this one, you tell people what you just did. All right. And you'll actually find that a lot of the comics that you write are exactly that. Okay. And you might go, well, wait, how can you make something funny 3 times? Or I mean, how do you make that funny that if people know what's going to happen here and then you do it and then it happens? It's all just about the commentary on the joke itself, sort of the absurdity of, I'm going to do something stupid, right? In this one. And then you do something stupid, and then you comment on how stupid it was, essentially, or whatever. So keep that in mind. It's just got a nice little rhythm to it. All right, here's another kind of formula. End on a question. So let's put it over here. End on a question. These are actually some of my favorite ones. Okay, so the reason is you can have, so here's your strip. You can have all this stuff going on over here, and the reader assumes that somebody is completely informed or they understand all this stuff. And then at the end of it, you could just kind of throw the reader through a loop by just asking something. All right. So it would be like, what? Just implying that somebody did not understand any of this other really obvious stuff. Okay. So, and I don't need to go through every possible question, but it is funny to say things like, wait, what? Or why? Or, or the question goes back to something that that should have been answered way long ago. Okay. So try to think how you can incorporate that. And sometimes I would almost just kind of wrap everything up over here and then throw in just some obscure question, So it's almost like most of the joke was contained in this area, and then just to be obscure, just throw in, a question. And also everybody can read pretty much. They can almost skim read an entire panel, So that sort of obscures what would be in this case kind of the final act joke. It keeps people from just going, looking ahead, and I'm sure some of you understand what I'm saying. Those of you that actually just look to that 4th panel and see what's supposed to be funny about this, because I don't have enough time to read all of this stuff. And so if they come over here and it's like, huh? Oh, okay, now I actually have to go and process the beginning of this. Okay, trying to see if I can illustrate this. All right, so you got the 2 cats over here. Only 1 piece left. You can have, you can have it, right? Will you chuck it in my mouth? Okay, open up. Open and ready for the chuck-in. Okay, what's the holdup? The holdup is I decided I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot this and swallow it too. Okay, right. So he obviously doesn't get, and of course it ends on a question. Okay, I like things that are. Ready for it? Hopeless. Actually, let me change that a little bit. Hopelessly unattainable. I find that there's always something funny about that. There's always a joke in there. And the more hopeless it is, or the more unattainable it is, the funnier it is. So you might have, so here's your panel, right? You might have characters climbing a tree. Okay, let's just use the cats, right? So they're going to go up this tree because they're trying to get something up to the top of it, right? On the way up, they can say funny things, but kind of emphasizing that, okay, it's taken a while to get up here, and then they finally get up to the top, right? And then you pull back and you realize that they're just completely in the wrong tree, right? Something like that. Okay. So just remember that this leads to humor. Hopelessly unattainable things. Okay, we'll set this one up before I record. So you've got your stupid line and your self-destructive line. And what I find is, stupid and stubborn kind of go hand in hand. And it's interesting that those words are really similar. So what I find is that the more stupid and stubborn somebody is, And the more self-destructive they are, right, the funnier it's going to be. And you see this with kids all the time because certainly I do. And if you have kids, I'm sure you know this, is that they end up screwing themselves, by having a tantrum or being stubborn, at this level. And all it ends up doing is making them, more self-destructive. And at a certain point, I'm sure every parent knows this, it does get to be really funny because it's just like, this is so absurd that you're doing this. And let's see if I can find a good example. Okay, well, here's one. So, the big cat is coming through here. She won't stop, right? And you're about to get rammed. Okay, you're about to get kicked. And then they keep going. Too bad it had to come to this. No, too bad for you. And then finally, of course, they're stuck together, and of course neither realizes, it wasn't my fault, So that's one example. I always like things that are uncontrollable. Well, I should say I don't like things like that, but I like it when people or comic strip characters try to control things that are uncontrollable, okay? And obviously, if they don't realize that it's an uncontrollable situation, there's humor in that. Or if they, in some sense, anthropomorphize the uncontrollableness of things, I find that that's funny too. So if they try to reason, or try to interact with something that can't possibly be controlled, I think there's a lot of room for humor there. So if you treat that uncontrollable situation like something that you can talk through, there's humor there. And let me see if I can find a good example of that. Okay, here's an example of that. So the all-black cat, who, nature gives every all-black cat a complete advantage because they're completely dark. They hunt at night, right? Why would any cat not be all black? So anyway, here's the all black cat. It begins to snow, and then Sky, I have a complaint. Hey, I know you can see me. I'm the only all black kitty in an all white world, right? So obviously, cat can't control that, but in my mind, I do like to imagine that every cat had some sort of complaint with every part of nature or existence, and they voice that complaint. Okay, here's another one. Doing the exact, can you fill that blank in for yourself? Wrong thing. I'm sure we all do this in life all the time. And this fits into the Johnny formula because what you can do with this is you talk about the exact wrong thing here and here, right? And then you do the exact wrong thing, and then you end up having to talk about it again, right? Because you just did the exact wrong thing. A lot of humor in that. Let me see if I can find a good example. And here is the perfect example. So here's the two cats. I'm sick of doing stuff today. Straight home it is then. Straight back is the most dangerous way to go, right? If we were followed by predators, then they'll know where we live, but watch, I'll duck into a decoy house first, and then at the end of it, it's, the decoy house is our house. Well, if we get mauled in our sleep, it's my bad, right? So, I like that one. Although this was inspired because I lived in a bunch of row houses in Bayville, New York, these, cookie cutter little houses that all got shipped up actually on the back of a truck from some military base. So I literally picked up and put somewhere else, and every one of them looked exactly the same. And me and all my neighbors all had cat doors, so they were constantly just going into the wrong house. I mean, maybe they knew it was the wrong house, but they would just go into somebody else's house. Okay, this is maybe getting into the danger zone of comics, is over-reliance on absurdity, but I think you can have a lot of fun with this if it's subtle absurdity. Okay, so you don't want to risk being just, spazzy and stupid, but I'm trying to think of a great example of this, and, okay, so you have person over here talking to a person over here, and he's got a sign that says, let's say he's got Trump, right? There's really nothing that funny about that, okay? But if you've got a little tiny ant and another little tiny ant over here, and he's got a sign that says Trump. Okay. Now you've got a starting place for something that's a lot funnier, because I mean, why does this ant care at all about Trump, right? So, in other words, people not so funny dealing with real world stuff. Little insects, funnier, right? Okay, this wasn't the strip that I thought would illustrate this, but it is. I think it does the job. Okay, so this also kind of goes into anthropomorphizing anything, if I'm getting that word correctly, whereas anything can talk and have a consciousness. So this is the water dish saying, "Have you come to apologize for ignoring me recently?" Of course, every cat hates drinking water, I'm convinced. And so she's like, "You disgust me, water dish. I'll never apologize. You're a dirty cat then." And then, of course, the tail tips over the water. No. And then the tail says, "That's for disrespecting a lady." God, thank you, tail. Okay, so here's another one I'd consider in the possible danger zone. Breaking the fourth wall. In other words, having your comic strip characters talk directly to the reader. But I think there are actual ways of doing this that are it's kind of, I guess, inside humor or meta. It's aware of itself in a sense. So here I do have one example of that, and I do like this one because it makes you think a little bit. So here's the cat thinking, "Is it possible to be bored with every single thing in your life?" Sort of posing this question to whatever God might be listening, right? And well, and then you get a response that is, "Are you talking to me? You didn't say anything before well." So if you actually go back and you read this is the only thing he's actually said. Never mind. How'd you get up there? Of course, I was bored. And kind of going back to the beginning of this. Boredom. Okay, here's another big topic you can find humor from. Sits. Right. So when either two characters want something that's completely opposite, there's usually something funny there. Or if just one character has a completely opposite view of what is correct or right or even normal. And some of that can make people think a little bit, especially if you're doing something with animals that can talk and things like that. Make the reader go into their mind a little bit better, which can, so it's like I would try to actually think like, what's a cat's view of the world? They share the same space and world with us, but it must be in some sense completely opposite. And there's a lot of humor in that, and I'll see if I can find a decent example. Okay, so here, this kind of describes that. So this is by far one of the best stare downs I've ever been in. This would actually happen to these cats. I know, we can strategize behind this soundproof glass, and then, of course, it's the exact opposite. Boys talk so loud, you can obviously hear them. Okay, here's another good one. Something I find always funny. Sadness. Especially if it is the more dominant or alpha male type characters. If they get sad in a comic strip, I'm always on board. I mean, look at this. If you just draw someone that remotely looks sad, it always looks a little funny as a cartoon. I mean, that was kind of the whole thing with Charlie Brown, wasn't it? It was that his whole life was kind of unrequited in some sense, and nothing ever went his way, and that was always kind of funny, right? So let's see if I can find a decent example of that. I'm sure I can find a comic with the big dominant great cat tearing up. Okay, here's a perfect example. So acorn falls on his head. Owie. Hey tree, how would you like it if I threw that acorn back at you? In fact, I will. Just don't watch my first few tries. Here comes the tear. Can I tell you a secret? I'm not even that good at holding things. So there you go. It just gets even sadder, doesn't it? And here's another one that kind of flows with the Johnny formula. Declaring, I'm sure you guys have all heard this, declaring one's intentions is a good way to what? Hear God laugh. Because as soon as you start doing this, most likely, whatever you say that you're going to do is not going to happen, right? So, declare. Keep talking about what you're going to do. The bigger this gets, the more, you say this is going to happen, this specific thing is going to happen, and then it doesn't, right? And then again, if you're going to write one more panel, comment on the fact that it didn't happen. And let's see if I can switch over and find a good example. Here we go. So I always like them trying to rename things. So the buggy von hop through the grass, hop through the grass, instead of it just being a grasshopper, right? So I thought I told you this yesterday. I would smush your head in if you hop near me again. Obviously, probably not the same grasshopper, right? And it says, well, you didn't listen, so the punishment is death. He's kind of eulogizing him right before it happens. I'm sorry it had to come to this. And of course, the grasshopper just hops away while he's not looking. And then he says, the smushing paw goes down, and there's no trace of you left but some meaty guts. Or not. That was a clean kill, right? So, I like that one. Okay, and here comes my last tip, which has to do with the worst thing for a writer of any comic strip. What is that? Writer's block. And here's my advice. See if I can zoom in. I need more space. Do something. Oops. All right. Patiently waiting for it. Do something are you ready for this? Hate. Okay. You will find humor in this every single time. Even if it's just cleaning the house, okay? I guarantee if you pull out the vacuum cleaner or if you start tidying up some hopelessly messy room, you will find something really funny in your brain. All right. So anyway, that's it for today. And let me switch back over here to the book real quick. So if you want to read the old compilation of these strips, you can find it at mows.com. That's mows.com, spelled like mows.com. MOWS. If you are representing a lawnmower company and you're hearing this, feel free to offer me money for that domain. Anyway, so here's one last one. Two cats looking at a flying squirrel. That squirrel just flew. Well, that seals it. We're starting back up our self-defense classes. Good idea. Good idea, sensei, you mean. So this is our last little tip here, to include in some sort of modifier, so almost just repeating back what somebody says, but with an extra word thrown in there, and just to make it a little tad funnier. And as you go through life, you'll probably find that there's lots of little sentences like that can work. Simple things like just saying on more than one occasion, something like that. So emphasizing that maybe whatever somebody's talking about happens more often than it does, or happens in a different way than you would think. So anyway, I'm out of here, and be sure to check out cartoonsmart.com for all sorts of tutorials. Again, I mostly teach iPhone programming now, Apple TV programming. So if you'd like to hear what I have to say in a non-comic strippy format, come on over.